Yo, what's going on, guys? I have a bit of a surprise today. This is the first time I'm saying this all set. I feel like we've reached like a stable point in set 5. What I mean by that is a lot of times after a fresh patch, S tier comp goes to D tier comp goes to A tier, but that didn't really happen in this patch. So a lot of things are just minor adjustments. And check this out here, guys. S tier and A tiers, that's a lot of different compositions you guys can be playing, which is something that can't be said about a lot of different other patches in this set so far. Not saying that this is good or bad, I'm just saying it how it is. Most people do like diverse metas, and this is definitely one of those patches, and probably like the first one that we've had in set 5, in my opinion at least. But you guys can check back on all the other old meta snapshots on my website, BunnyMuffins.lol. So before we get into the tier list, I know a lot of people are into content creation for TFT. If that is you, you guys are going to not want to miss the sponsor of this video. Hey guys, today I want to show you an app that allows you to record and share your gameplay. Right now, I am using Metal TV, which is a free app on desktop, Android, iOS, and Mac, and it has a capability to record in 1080p and 60 FPS, and also even better. So for all those 4K people out there, you could also do that too. If that's already enough to convince you to download the app, check out the link in the description below to download Metal TV. If you are not convinced yet, let me show you the advantages of using a much more modern type of recording software. So first off, they have mobile integration. So you'll be able to access your clips captured on your PC and your phone. You can also do this the opposite way, where if you have clips on your Android, you can access them from your PC. This is really useful if you're posting to YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, because you will need that PC to mobile back and forth pretty often. For most recorders, you have to press record before you start recording, but for Metal, you could actually backtrack in time and clip engaging and exciting things that happen in your game. For example, if you hit a 3-star and you forgot to press record, no worries, Metal has a hotkey for that where you could just press a button and record clips that already happened. You can adjust the length of the clips by going into your settings, and this would all be dependent on what type of social media platform you're going for. After that, Metal makes it really easy to share your clips by giving you editing capabilities, but if you don't even want to do that, you can just share it right away on any type of social media. Pretty much Metal outclasses all of the popular types of recording software out there right now, so there really isn't that much reason not to use it. So definitely click on the links in the description below to download Metal TV right now. Again, you could do it on any platform. You guys know I have both a Mac and a PC. I have it on both of them right now. But thanks so much. Let's get back to the video. All right, we're back, guys. Now to get into the tier list. S tier Redeemed Vel'Koz I think is the best comp right now, but just barely. All the S tiers are really close together right now. After that, we have Draven, Karma, and Yasuo. These 3 comps did get slight nerfs. Draven got hit because Ryze got nerfed, Karma got nerfed a bit, and then Yasuo got nerfed a bit. However, I still think these comps are very strong because Riot didn't do what they always do. When they nerfed a comp, they made like 1 or 2 small changes instead of making like 10 huge ones, which is what they've normally been doing so far in set 5. But they held off on the ban hammer this patch. So that is why all these comps are still really good and really playable. Now onto the A tier, Morde Draven still very good. Aphelios got a slight buff. He's still behind everyone else in terms of 4-cost carries, but he definitely is getting closer. And then after that, Assassins, Abomination, and Varus. In the B tier, we have Renewers with Soraka carry, followed by Reroll Skirmishers, and then into Kayle, Legionnaires, Hellions, and then a Draconic Ashe comp. C tiers don't really suggest playing these, but Draconic Sett, Cavalier, Zyra, and Vayne Reroll, I'd probably avoid these comps for now. Zyra has a better build in the Abomination build, which we'll get into later, and then Draconic Sett is just like not really a thing anymore because he got hit too hard. So now onto how to play every single composition. First up, we have the Vel'Koz with 6 Redeemed. Pretty standard comp. A lot of the 6 synergy comps, such as Forgotten, Redeemed, and Dawnbringer, these are going to be really strong, and they've been strong for the past patch, but it still holds true to this one. And you just put a mana item on Vel'Koz. Spirit Shojin is the best one by far, followed by a Jeweled Gauntlet for damage, and then some sort of damage and healing item as a 3rd item. Hand of Vengeance fits the bill perfectly there. Of course, for God Kings, you'll want to get a Garen because he reduces magic resistance of the enemy team, but you could also build stuff like Static Shiv or Ionic Spark to get the magic resistance reduction anyways. It's very crucial that you do have some sort of magic reduction though, because a lot of people right now, they're playing 3 to 4 Mystics because that trait is really easy to splash in on these past couple of patches. If you do not get a Garen, your primary tank is going to be Rel, and to play this comp, you do what's called a standard leveling strategy. You guys can check out the leveling guide to find out more info on that. On to the next comp, we have Forgotten Draven. Nothing much has really changed here. Ryze got nerfed, his secondary stun duration is now halved, but honestly, you put mana items on Ryze and he still AoE CCs from the backline, so you can't really ask for much more than that. And he obviously still does the same thing, it just doesn't last quite as long. One thing to note, they changed Forgotten a little bit on this patch. So they lowered the amount of stats that you get from the Forgotten trait unless you add additional shadow items onto your Forgotten units. So what does that mean? Well, you probably want Dark Blue buff on Rise as usual, or a Dark Spear or Shojin, and then on Draven, you would prefer if you had maybe 2 of the 3 items that he has to be the shadow variants, such as from Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, and Bloodthirster. He can use a lot of other items as well, so do make note of that too. You guys can check out my Draven Unranked to Diamond video for more info on that, because we play like 3 hours worth of Draven in this video. Now onto Dawnbringer Karma. Nothing much has changed here. You just want 1 mana item and then a bunch of AP on her. Play 6 Dawnbringer, get a big power spike, add in like Garen, Taric, and Ivern for your late game tanks, and you're chilling from there. If you want to go super late game, you go into the 4 Invoker build. This is probably like one of the easier comps to transition into that. It's either this comp or Varus. Varus is also great for going into the 4 Invoker comp, but this one is with a Teemo or Heimerdinger carry, depending on who you get to 2-star. And they like all the items that Karma likes. So if you had a Shojin on Karma, put that on Heimerdinger. If you had a blue buff on Karma, put the blue buff on Teemo. Put the AP on both of them, whoever's 2-star, and you pretty much just go from there. On to the next build, we have Nightbringer Yasuo. This one is a reroll comp, so all the other comps we went over so far, they are like standard leveling comps, where you go to level 7, stabilize, and then roll at level 8. But Nightbringer Yasuo likes to reroll on level 7 for 3-star Yasuo and Lee Sin, and then you itemize Yasuo as your primary damage dealer. After that, we have the A tier. So A tiers, they're still good, just not quite as good as all the other S tiers. Pretty much what I recommend in general is always play A and S tier comps, and then only play B tier comps if you get really good starts for them. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, do hit the subscribe button down below if you have not already. And if you guys are already subscribed, go ahead, hit the like, and leave a comment if you guys have any questions so far. So on this Draven Morde comp, this is very similar to the Forgotten build, except instead of running 6 Forgotten, you only run 3, and then you kind of flex 3 different spots. So you could add in a ton of Mystics, you could add in stuff like Dragon Slayers, you could just add in random strong units. Right now we have like the random strong unit variant with Taric and Darius up front. But what I love about this build is that you can adapt it to whatever your opponents are playing. So are people playing a ton of magic damage, which is pretty popular on this patch? Well, you could play up to 3 or 4 Mystic instead. You could take out Diana and Taric and add in like a Morgana and a Kindred, for example. If you're facing a bunch of physical damage and you maybe got like an Ironclad Spatula, you could replace Taric and Lulu for stuff like Rel and Nautilus. Tons of different options here with this comp. This comp is definitely pretty flexible, so it is a little more difficult to play, but again, you are going to be using a standard leveling pattern. Now onto Aphelios. So if you guys are on the website, like for the people who bookmarked this already, someone in my Discord already said like, oh man, I used the Aphelios guide and did really, really well on it. Well, if you guys are checking the website constantly, I do post guides there before I release videos on them. And I won't do any spoilers on Aphelios because I'm going to be releasing a video tomorrow on how to play Aphelios. But in case you guys do want to jump the gun a little earlier, it is on my website for the written version there. Now on to the next comp, we have Assassin. So people have been popularizing the Nocturne build again, which is pretty interesting because people thought Assassins were dead. But the Nocturne build seems to be a pretty good version. That doesn't mean never go Katarina. You just kind of go for Assassins and then itemize whoever is closer to 3-star. It's the same as always, but people are leaning more towards the Nocturne carry than the Katarina carry as they have in the previous patches. If you do end up going for the Nocturne carry, be sure to prioritize the Revenant units such as Ivern and Volibear. And if you do go for Katarina carry, make sure you have a Viego already and then add a 3rd Forgotten unit. Moving along in the A tier, we have the Abomination Zyra build. So this is a new build, and you might notice we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units on the board here. And that is because the 2 other units you play are 2 tanks, and it could be pretty much anything. So it could be something like Ivern Volibear, it could be like some sort of Taric plus another knight, such as a God King, it could be Rel plus something else. Literally any of those will work. But the main thing you want to do here, and this build is a little tricky, I will give you that, because you want a Draconic start, get a 3-star Zyra, and then play into 4 or 5 Abominations if you get a Spatula for it. You could end up dropping Kindred later in the game if you do get an Abomination Spatula, and then just run 4 Abomination. Really just depends on what you are hitting in that particular game. But I do highly recommend trying this build out, especially if you guys have not played this yet, because this is one of the new builds that people have been playing at high levels. On to the next comp, we have the Varus build. So Varus, I gotta admit, guys, I was wrong about Varus. They nerfed Varus, and I was like, why were they doing that? Turns out Varus is still pretty good. If I had to guess, it is because a lot of other comps got nerfed, which made Varus stronger, because Varus got a slight nerf, whereas the other comps got hit a tiny bit harder, so maybe that's why he is getting a little stronger in this current patch. But you could play a lot of different combinations with Varus. You could also use him to pivot into other builds, which is the most popular thing to do. For example, you could build Varus, build an attack speed item such as Guinsoo's Rageblade, and then a Spear of Shojin for mana, and then go into like a Heimerdinger build. That's something that I've seen done pretty often. Essentially, Varus is one of the perfect transition units. You could go into Redeemed builds, you could go into Ranger builds. He's essentially a great holder for both attack speed, attack damage, and ability power items, so you could literally just use him in the mid game and pivot into almost anything. And let's say you get him 3-star for some reason, you could always just go ahead and play him with any combination of items. That's why Varus is really good right now. Pretty much all the S and A tier comps, he can pivot into them really, really easily, and that can't be said for a lot of other units. On to the next build, we have the B tier. So B tiers, again, you only want to play these if you get really good starts with them. For example, in this Coven Renewer Soraka carry build, if you're getting a lot of Sorakas, that's the only time you want to try this build. You don't want to like force this build. You don't want to like, oh, like maybe I should just roll for a lot of Sorakas and I'll just hit it. Not really the best strategy if the comp is only B tier in strength. However, if you are playing the game and you have a bunch of ability power items, let's say you're using Soraka as an item holder for Karma, then for some reason, during stage 3, you get 2-star Sorakas without rolling at all. Like, definitely try to go for the 3-star Soraka, you know? Like, nothing's stopping you. But essentially, you just reroll on level 6. That's the best level to reroll for 2 stars. You play Covens, buff her up, and then she just, like, hits everything and deals a ton of damage. Lots of different builds work on her, too. Jeweled Gauntlet, I think, is the best damage item, and then Spear of Shojin's the best mana regeneration item. The third item can literally be anything. After that, we have Skirmisher reroll. Skirmisher reroll, this one you reroll on level 7. You want Lee Sin, Pantheon, and Nidalee 3-star. You don't need to get all of them, but whoever you do get to 3-star, do be sure that you have items for them. If not, it's kind of a waste. After that, as you level up with this comp, I like adding in Ironclad units such as Rel and Nautilus, because they both complement Jax's synergy really, really well, and there are quite a few Draven players out there. On to the next build, we have Kayle Knights. Kayle got nerfed quite a bit. I feel like the new Kayle is much worse than the old Kayle. So definitely not as strong. She definitely just doesn't 1v9 in the later portions of the fight as easily as she did before. So I do think overall this comp is weaker. So I would try to avoid this unless you get like a really early Kayle and have perfect items already. Again, Varus is a great pivot into Kayle because they're both redeemed units. Varus uses Rageblade, Varus uses Hand of Vengeance really well, so you could easily pivot into this from that comp. On to the next build, we have Legionnaires. No one really plays Riven anymore. It's not that it's a bad build, it's just not that great, you know? There's like nothing that really shines from it, and it's really difficult to get Riven 3-star. If Riven 3-star was easy to get, this comp would be pretty good, but if you compare Riven builds to Yasuo builds, if I'm going for a 3-cost carry, put me in the Yasuo boat any day of the week over Riven. After that, we have Hellions. Hellions got slight buffs in the early game. It's not like that great of a comp, but it is better than it was before. And like, guys, late game Teemo, it's always going to be one of the strongest builds in the game because Teemo is just absolutely disgusting. However, Teemo did receive some nerfs, so even though the early game is a little better and they buffed some of the 3-star versions of Hellions, I don't think reroll Hellion is that worth it to go for quite yet. So they're kind of in this awkward phase where like the 3-stars of the early game units got buffed, but Teemo got nerfed in the late game. So they kind of nerfed the build that was popular and then they buffed the build that was unpopular. So it kind of got into this awkward spot in my opinion. After that, we have Draconic Ashe. If you're going for a Draconic opener, and let's say you were trying to go for Zyras with Abominations and then you just like get more Ashes instead or get a bunch of attack damage items instead, definitely go for the Ashe build. Maybe you're trying to go for Aphelios and then you use Ashe as an item holder and then all of a sudden you get like a bunch more Ashes. Go ahead and just play the Draconic Ashe build if you have them on your board pretty early because you just get a lot of copies of free units and worst case scenario, you could always sell them for free gold and pivot into something else. I think that is it for our B comps. In C tiers, like just don't play any of these. I already explained them before. But let's do the item priority really quickly. I think Rod is my favorite so far, but I see more players going for Sword. Obviously, it's going to depend on playstyle, as I say every time I do this. So whatever comps you're good at, what you need to do is look at what critical items are. So like, for example, I like playing Vel'Koz and Karma, so Rod is a no-brainer for me. But if you're playing like a lot of Yasuo and Aphelios, Bow is going to be really good for you. I think if you are flexing though, Sword is going to be the best because all the AP builds like Spear of Shojin, Draven and the Rangers obviously love swords. Assassins like swords too, so I think sword is the most flexible item. It fits in the most amount of builds. But if you are like a Vel'Koz one trick and going like 20 out of 20 Vel'Koz, definitely go for the rod, or just like follow the guide I have for some of these comps. Like if you're forcing Dawnbringer Karma, like just look up the build here, full guide, and then just scroll down to the item section, and like on the carousel it'll give you the priority here and like why to go for those. So that is it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Be sure to check out the links in the description below, both for Metal TV, both for all my other types of social media. But thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you all later.